Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. We are studying the chapter of thermodynamics. The topic under discussion is the relation between pressure and volume in adiabatic expansion of gas, or PV raised to power gamma is equal to constant. At the end we will derive this relationship. Firstly, we will define the process, adiabatic process. The process in which no heat enters or leaves the system is called as adiabatic process. In other words, quantity of heat Q remains constant. It means partial Q is equal to 0. 0 indicates no heat is entering or leaving the system. According to first law of thermodynamics, we know dE is equal to partial Q minus partial W. dE indicates change in internal energy. Partial Q indicates infinity small change in heat minus infinity small change in work. Put the value of partial Q in equation 2 as partial Q is 0. So dE is equal to 0 minus partial W, or dE is equal to minus partial W. It means work is done at the expense of internal energy. Let dV be the very small change in volume at constant pressure. So partial W is equal to P dV. P dV indicates the pressure volume work. As we know in thermodynamics, the only work is the pressure volume work. Put the value of this P dV. So dE is equal to minus P dV. Here put the value of P dV in this point. So dE is equal to minus P dV. According to the definition of molar heat capacity at constant volume, CV is the molar heat capacity V at constant volume. This is equal to QV by dt at constant volume. As we know, QV is equal to dE. It means heat supplied at constant volume is equal to the change in internal energy. So instead of QV, we can write dE. CV is equal to dE by dt at constant volume, or dE is equal to, bring this dt here, CV dt. This is question number 6. Now compare the question number 5 with the question number 6. So it will become CV dt. This CV dt is equal to this one minus P dV. Consider 1 mole of an ideal gas as it. This is the ideal gas equation. PV is equal to nRT. When n is equal to 1 mole, P is equal to RT by V. Put the value of P in equation number 7. Then CV dt is equal to minus RT into dV. Bring this T at this point. So CV dt by T is equal to minus R dV by V. Just I am rearranging this equation. We can integrate this equation as d. In mathematical term, d indicates the differentiation. So we can integrate this equation between the limits. T will be integrated between the limits of T2 and T1, and d will be integrated within the limits of V2 and V1. Put the sign of integration and with the limits T2 and T1. This is CV dt by T. This is equal to R dV by V within the limits V2 and V1. CV is a constant, so we will bring it before this integration sign. T2 by T1 dt by dt. This is equal to minus R dV by V. R is again a constant, so we will bring it outside the integration constant or integration sign V2 by V1. Students, we will integrate when dt by t the result of this integration is always log natural T. This is L and N. Small l and n is known as log natural. This is ln. Cv log natural t. This is the result of the integration of dt by t. Always remember this one. Similarly, the result of the integration of dv by v is always log natural v. We will put the limits t2 and t1 here, v2 and v1. So we will solve this limits. Cv is equal to Cv into log natural t2 minus log natural t1 is equal to minus r log natural v2 minus log natural v1. Here write the log natural v1. Again, there is a rule of log that when two values are subtracting, we can write it in the form of division. So I am writing it in this form of division. Cv log natural t2 by t1. This is equal to r log natural v2 by v1. Cv log natural t2 by t1 is equal to, just reverse this sign, v1 by v2 and the negative sign will finish. R log natural v1 by v2. I am reversing it in this form. As we know, Cp minus Cv is equal to R. Put the value of R in equation 10. R is Cv log natural T2 by T1 is equal to Cp minus Cv log natural V1 by V2. Log natural T2 by T1 is equal to, bring this Cv at this point, Cp minus Cv by Cv log natural V1 by V2. Log natural T2 by T1, this is equal to, we can write this in this form, Cp by Cv minus Cv by Cv into log natural V1 by V2. This Cv by Cv is cancelled with one another. We will write 1 for this one. So log natural T2 by T1 is equal to Cp by Cv minus 1 into log natural V1 by V2. Cp by Cv is equal to gamma. This is the word gamma. Log natural T2 by T1 is equal to gamma minus 1 into log natural V1 by V2. Rearrange this equation 1, keeping in view the rule of log. What is this one? That log natural T2 by T1 is equal to this coefficient gamma minus 1 can be written in the form of the exponent. So log natural v1 by v2 in the form of gamma minus 1. Taking the antilog of this equation, when antilog is always the opposite of the log. So it will become T2 by T1 is equal to V1 by V2 into gamma minus 1. According to general gas equation, P1 V1 by T1 is equal to P2 V2 by T2. Or we can write, bring this T2 here, T2 by T1 is equal to P2 V2 by P1 V1. Comparing equation 13 and 14, 13 is T2 by T1 is equal to V1 by V2 into gamma minus 1, and 14 is T2 by T1 is equal to P2 V2 by P1 V1. We can write these two equations in this form. P2 V2 by P1 V1 is equal to V1 by V2 into gamma minus 1. Again, the P2 by V2 by P1 V1 is equal to, we can write this in this form, V1 by V2 raised to power gamma into V1 by V2 raised to power minus 1. This minus 1 can be reversed in this form, that V2 by V1. V1 by V2 raised to power gamma into V2 by V1, multiplying on both sides by V1 by V2. Multiply this one, V1 by V2 into P2 V2 by P1 V1 is equal to V1 by V2 raised to power gamma V2 by V1 into V1 by V2. These values are cancelled by one another. Here at this point they will cancel. Similarly, they will cancel at this point. The remaining values are P2 by P1 is equal to V1 by V2 raised to power gamma. Cross multiplying, we get P2 V2 raised to power gamma P1 V1 raised to power gamma. Students, please note that this gamma is over the V only, not on both of these one. So at that we will write PV raised to power gamma is equal to constant, hence proved. Next is the relation between temperature and volume in case of adiabatic expansion. Previously we saw the relation between pressure and volume. Here the change is that it is the relation between temperature and volume. Write all the description and derivation till equation 13 of the previous topic of the relation between pressure and volume here at this point. Then after equation number 13 we will do some derivation. T2 by T1 is equal to V1 by V2 raised to power gamma minus 1. This is the equation number 13 of the previous topic. Just we rearrange the above equation. T2 V2 raised to power gamma minus 1 is equal to T1 V1 raised to power gamma minus 1. And the end result will be TV raised to power gamma minus 1 is equal to constant. When the temperature and volume are taken, then the result of the equation will be TV raised to power gamma minus 1 is equal to constant. So our second equation is also proved. Next, relation between temperature and pressure in case of adiabatic expansion. Similarly, we will again write all the above part which is given in the previous topic of the relation between pressure and volume till this point. T2 by T1 is equal to V1 by V2 raised to power gamma minus 1. Now we are doing the further calculations according to general gas equation. P1 V1 by T1 is equal to P2 V2 by T2, or we can write in this form V1 by V2 is equal to P2 this T1 divided by P1 and this T2. Substitute the value of V1 by V2, this V1 by V2 in this equation 13 at this point. So T2 by T1 is equal to P2 T1 by P1 T2 raised to power gamma minus 1. T2 by T1 is equal to P2 by P1 into gamma minus 1. Similarly, this T1 by T2 into gamma minus 1. So the T2 by T1 can be equal to, bring this T1 by T2 at this side of equation, it will become T2 by T1. This will T1 by T2 raised to power gamma minus 1. When you will bring it at this side of equation, it will become T2 by T1 into gamma minus 1. This is equal to P2 by P1 into raised to power gamma minus 1. So T2 by T1, this T2 by T1 here, and T2 by T1 raised to power gamma into T2 by T1 raised to power minus 1. Split this equation in two parts. Gamma and minus 1 is equal to P2 by P1 into gamma minus 1. So the equation will become T2 by T1 into T2 by T1 raised to power gamma. Reverse this equation as its power is minus 1, so reverse it. So it will become T1 by T2 is equal to P2 by P1 raised to power gamma minus 1. This T1 by T2 will be cancelled by this T2 by T1. Cancel these two values with one another. The remaining value will be T2 by T1 raised to power gamma is equal to P1 by P2. Now you can also reverse it, minus gamma minus 1 with 1 minus gamma. When you will do it in this form, 1 minus gamma, this equation will again reverse. Before it was P2 by P1, now it will be reversed in the form of P1 by P2, and the power value will change from gamma minus 1 to 1 minus gamma. Note this point. T2 by T1 raised to power gamma is equal to P1 by P2 raised to power 1 minus gamma by taking the gamma root. Note this is the gamma root on both sides. You will take the gamma root like the square root or cubic root. Here I will write gamma, put the sign of under root, write gamma, put the sign of under root, write gamma, T2 by T1 into gamma, P1 by P2 into 1 minus gamma. So T2 by T1, the value of this under root is 1 by gamma. T2 by T1, gamma into 1 by gamma is equal to P1 by P2, 1 minus gamma into 1 by gamma. Cancel this gamma with 1 gamma, it will become T2 by T1. This is equal to P1 by P2 into 1 minus gamma by gamma. By cross multiplying, we get T2 P2 raised to power 1 minus gamma by gamma is equal to T1 P1 into 1 minus gamma by gamma. At the end, TP 1 minus gamma by gamma is equal to constant.